everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your support. Today we're going to talk about an oral discussion technique. And it's one of my favorite methods used. It can be used in the middle and high school level. It certainly can be used for the upper elementary school level, third grade and up. But I have seen it done mostly in the high school setting. And a couple years ago, I observed this technique and I fell in love with it. And I thought, wow, I would love to do that with my students. And I've done it with my students, with my sophomores. They loved it. I enjoyed it, doing it with them. And so we are going to get into that today. I'll be discussing that with you. And this particular method that I'm talking about is called the Socratic seminar. Before we get into the discussion, I would like to show you a video of a teacher in Georgia. His name is Mr. Brian West, and he uses the Socratic seminar from East Hall High School with his freshmen. Let's take a look. So that's the desk arrangement. Let's jump to 313. So now they're beginning their discussion of Romeo and Juliet. So that was the characteristics of the Socratic seminar, the physical environment being desks in a circle, the way he has set up his classroom where there are students outside of a smaller circle. However, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be where the whole entire room is in a circle. And if you notice, each student had 3 pieces of artifacts on their desk and they had a red cup. And that was Mr. West's way of grading them. Each time the student talks, they take a piece of their item and put it in the cup, and so they can see who's participating and who's not. So that was Mr. West's way of grading. There are other ways to evaluate students of how well they participate in the seminars, just merely walking around and observing. Whoever talks, put a check mark by that student's name. So there are various ways. Now that we've witnessed a visual of the characteristics of the seminar, let's jump into the procedure. Step 1, seat arrangement. The desks need to be placed again in a circle, and this should be done prior to the day of the discussion. That way, when students come in, it'll be a smooth transition. Students can just take their seats, and everyone can get ready with the day. When my co-teacher and I, when we hold our Socratic seminars, we have the students of their last period of the day prior to arrange the room, so it'll be ready for them for the next day. Step 2, present the guidelines of a Socratic seminar. Here are the guidelines, and especially for sophomores, students need rules and regulations of how a discussion should be to prevent any chaotic experiences. And then that will ensure that the seminar will go smoothly. So the first guideline, the teacher should announce and let them know one student should speak at a time. Everyone's voice matters. Every student is important, and we want to hear everyone's opinion or statement, but we need to be able to hear it clearly. So one student at a time can speak. Guideline number 2, while the speaker is speaking, everyone else must listen and give him or her their most undivided attention, just out of respect. Number 3, no need for students to raise their hands with the Socratic seminar. Usually the teacher will appoint a discussion leader, which is one of the students, and usually one of the students who's more outgoing, not as timid, to call on the student to speak. Or, when the student sees that one speaker is done, the next student can jump in and voice their opinion or make their statement. Guideline number 4, using the text as a reference. And this is so important. Each time a student makes a claim, they have to back it up with evidence. So that student needs to use whatever piece of literature that they're studying for evidence to support their claim. A seminar is not a debate, especially for sophomores and freshmen. They tend to get excited when they make their point. Sometimes it often results in shouting over one another. We had an incident where a student yelled. And so it's very important for the educator beforehand to let the room know it's not a debate, and there is no teasing or no put downs when that student makes a statement. Now, it is okay to disagree. You don't have to agree with every single point the student's making. So then, that is when, if a student disagrees, another student may say, "Oh, Sister Proctor, I know you said X, Y, and Z. Can you elaborate a little more? And where did you come up with that claim? Because I kind of not really seeing it, but can you elaborate?" That's a way of just calmly disagreeing and asking them to further explain their statement. Once the guidelines have been explained and the students understand what to do, it is time for step number 3. And this is it. This is all done in one period. The class as a whole would start off reading a piece of literature, such as a short story, or a journal article, or perhaps a nonfiction piece. And again, that's just in one day. Sometimes there are Socratic seminars where you could be studying a full novel, such as Fahrenheit 411 by Ray Bradbury, or a full-length play such as Antigone by Sophocles. Then it would take multiple days. You would read that text 1 or 2 days prior to the discussion. Then on the 3rd day, you would have that discussion. But if it's all held in one day, you would read the text together as a class. Then afterwards, step 4, you briefly review that article or piece of literature. And the teacher would then just give general questions to the students just to make sure they have enough of an understanding before jumping into the seminar. And the questions would be very general, such as discussing the theme of the story. What is the author's meaning? What is the author trying to say to the reader? Once students have a feel and they feel like they understand the story thoroughly enough, the Socratic seminar can begin. Usually the teacher or the discussion leader, which is appointed by the teacher, can open up with what's called the opening question. Sometimes you may need more than one to open up, and that's fine. After the opening question, that's when the discussion starts, and students can then jump in and give their statement and their evidence. Now, keeping in mind, this method is very student-led. What I mean is, an administrator may come in and see the teacher just standing back and letting the students take charge. And it sounds it may sound a little crazy at first because the thought of, wow, students in charge? But it has to be that way because that is how the students will really learn and really get a thorough understanding of each other's ideas. Because that's the main point of this activity, is students learning not just from the teacher, not just from us, but from each other. And knowing that students have their thoughts, their views as well. Now, every minute, you may not have a discussion, or you may not have a student talking every single second, and that's okay. If there's a little silence, the teacher needs to wait and see what's going to happen. Perhaps students are just trying to formulate their thoughts and see what they would like to say next. Now, it seems like the pause is beginning to get a bit long. Then the teacher can go ahead and jump in and ask a question to kind of bring the students back in on the discussion. Step 6, once the discussion is there, go. What went well? What do you think could have been improved? Do you, as a participant, feel that you participated well in this discussion? Did you have a thorough understanding of the text as a result, even beforehand? What are your ideas? What are your thoughts? Should we do this again? And then that way, the students again will feel like they have a say in this activity and in future activities. And again, it's one of my favorites that I've done with my students. We thoroughly enjoy it, and I look forward to doing more Socratic seminars even in the future coming school year. Thank you, everyone.